In the frozen north, over 1,000 years ago, men went to battle believing their gods were doomed to die. They believed the sky would crack, the oceans would boil, and even the gods of Asgard would fall in blood and fire. And at the center of it all was one figure, a one-eyed god. In the old stories, fate isn't a suggestion, it's law. At the roots of the world tree Yggdrasil sit three women. The Norns, they carved the destiny of gods and men into the wood of the tree itself. Once something is carved, it cannot be erased. Unlike the triumphant gods of Greece or Rome, the Norse gods live with a ticking clock above their heads. They know there will be a last day, a final battle, a sunset for the entire cosmos. Most of them ignore it. Thor drinks and fights giants, but Odin is different. He is a god of obsession, of sacrifice, and of terrible knowledge. And in his hunger for wisdom, he discovers something dreadful, not just that the world will end, but exactly how. One of the oldest stories tells us that Odin comes to Mimir's well, a deep, cold pool of pure wisdom. Mimir guards this well, and he names the price. If Odin wants a drink, if he truly wants to see, he must give one of his eyes. Odin does not hesitate. He tears out his own eye and drops it into the black water. From that moment on, Odin sees more clearly with one eye than most beings do with two. He sees the doom of the gods. He sees Ragnarok. He knows that one day, the monstrous wolf Fenrir will break his bonds. The Midgard serpent will rise from the sea, and the fire giants will march. And he knows something even worse, his own death. Odin will stand before Fenrir, and the wolf will swallow him whole. Imagine ruling the cosmos, knowing the exact moment you will die, and knowing you cannot stop it. That is the burden Odin carries. Most gods demand sacrifices from others. Odin sacrifices himself, to himself. For 9 days and 9 nights, he hangs on the world tree, wounded by his own spear, with no food or drink, just wind, darkness, and pain. Why? Because he seeks tools, the runes, symbols of magic, language, and hidden lore. On the edge of death, he understands them. He rises again, a master of secrets. But remember what this means. The god who already knows the world will end now has the tools to prepare for it. He cannot erase fate, but he can sharpen his spear. What do you do if you know you're marching toward a hopeless battle? If you're Odin, you start recruiting. He creates Valhalla, the Hall of the Slain. Every warrior who dies bravely may be chosen and brought here. They eat, drink, and every day, they fight each other to the death. Every evening, their wounds are healed, and the feast begins again. To the Vikings, this sounded like paradise, but underneath it all lies something colder. Valhalla is not a reward, it is a training camp. Odin is building an army of the dead. He knows he will die. He knows they will die. He gathers them anyway. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like and subscribe for more tales from myth and history. Thanks for watching. Imagine if every great poem, every epic saga, every brilliant idea came from one stolen drink, not from talent, not from hard work, from a single magical mead, brewed from the blood of a murdered god. This is the story of how Odin, the Allfather, lied, seduced, murdered, and shapeshifted, all to steal the mead of poetry, and how the Norse believed that's where human genius really comes from. In the Viking world, poetry wasn't a hobby, it was a weapon. The skald-scored poets weren't just entertainers, they were historians, propagandists, and PR agents wrapped into one. A good poem could make a king famous for 1,000 years. A bad one could turn him into a joke. So the Norse asked a simple question: where does this kind of power come from? How can words cut deeper than swords? Their answer was a drink, a magical mead that only the gods possessed. And to find the origin of that mead, we have to start with the wisest being who ever lived, a god born from spit. After a brutal war between the Aesir and the Vanir, two tribes of gods, the sides finally made peace. To seal the truce, each god spat into a great bowl. They didn't want this symbol of peace to go to waste, so they shaped that mingled spit into a man. His name was Kvasir. Kvasir wasn't just smart, he was the embodiment of divine wisdom. The myths say there was no question he could not answer. He wandered the worlds, sharing knowledge with gods, giants, dwarves, and men. But wisdom, in these stories, is dangerous. And very soon, someone decided to own it. Two dwarves, Fiala and Galar, invited Kvasir into their home. They claimed they wanted to hear his wisdom. Instead, they killed him. They drained his blood into a cauldron, then mixed it with honey. From the blood of the wisest being in existence, the first mead of poetry was brewed. They poured this mead into 3 vessels: Ukrier, Bone, and Essen. Anyone who drank from them would become a master poet, a scholar, a genius. They would be able to speak so beautifully that others would believe almost anything. And the dwarves kept it for themselves. Soon after, the dwarves had another visitor, a giant named Gilling, for fun. They took him out on a boat, capsized it, and watched him drown. When they got home, they told Gilling's wife what happened. And then, for an encore, they dropped a millstone on her head when she cried too loudly. But Gilling had a son, Sutung, who was much bigger and much less amused. Sutung seized the dwarves and took them to a small rock that would be covered by the tide. As the water rose, the dwarves begged for their lives. They offered Sutung the only thing they had of value, the mead of poetry. Sutung accepted. He took the 3 vessels and hid them deep inside a mountain called Hinnitbjörg. He then commanded his daughter Gunla to guard them day and night. The mead was now in the hands of the giants. Word of this powerful drink eventually reached Asgard, and one god in particular, Odin, decided that this mead, this ultimate source of wisdom and eloquence, belonged to him. But how do you steal something from inside a mountain, guarded by a giantess, on the orders of an even bigger giant? Well, if you're Odin, you don't use brute force. You use deception, charm, and a whole lot of trickery. Odin's quest begins in disguise. He takes the form of a wandering farmhand named Bolverk, which means evildoer. He arrives at a field where 9 of Sutung's servants are mowing hay. He offers to sharpen their scythes with his whetstone. The scythes become so sharp that the servants all want to buy the stone. Odin tosses it into the air, and in their greed, they all leap for it, accidentally slitting each other's throats with their newly sharpened blades. Just like that, 9 servants are dead. Bolverk then goes to the hall of Bogi, Sutung's brother, and finds him complaining that all his servants just mysteriously died. What a coincidence. Odin, as Bolverk, offers to do the work of all 9 men for the entire summer. In exchange, he asks for just 1 sip of Sutung's mead. Bogi agrees, though he admits he has no real control over the mead. Summer ends, and Bolverk has done the work of 9 men. He demands his payment. Bogi goes to his brother Sutung, who flatly refuses. He is not sharing a single drop. So, the plan changes. Odin reveals his true identity to Bogi and tells him they'll have to get the mead by trickery. He pulls out an auger, a drill Neyrati. He tells Bogi to drill a hole through the mountain Hinnitbjörg. Bogi drills, but he's trying to trick Odin. When he claims the hole is finished, Odin blows into it, and the dust flies back in his face. He knows Bogi lied. He commands him to drill again, properly this time. On the second try, Odin blows, and the dust flies through the hole. It's done. In that instant, Odin transforms himself into a snake and slithers into the tiny opening. Bogi, realizing he's been played, tries to stab the snake with the auger, but it's too late. Odin is inside the mountain. Inside the rock chamber, Odin finds who he's looking for, Gunla, the giantess guarding the mead. Now he transforms again, this time into the shape of a handsome man. He spends the next 3 nights with her. The stories say he wooed her, charmed her, and promised her love. In exchange for those 3 nights, Gunla agreed to let him have 3 sips of the mead, 1 sip from each of the 3 vessels. But Odin wasn't a god of moderation. With his first sip, he drained the entire first vessel. Ukrarare with his second, he emptied Bone, and with his third, he finished the last one, Essen. He now held all the mead of poetry inside his body. He transformed one last time into a great eagle and burst out of the mountain, flying as fast as he could towards Asgard. When Sutung saw the eagle escaping, he knew what had happened. He also transformed into an eagle and gave chase. Their race was on. Back in Asgard, the gods saw Odin flying towards them, pursued by a furious world of humans. This small, accidental portion is known as the Skald's Share, and it is from this tiny bit that all the bad poets, the hacks, and the wannabes get their inspiration. The true gift, the pure mead, Odin kept for himself and the other gods, sharing it only with the most worthy human poets. And so, the journey of the mead of poetry is complete. Born from the spit of gods, brewed from the blood of wisdom, stolen by dwarves, bartered to a giant, and finally, through seduction and deception, claimed by Odin. This story tells us so much about the Norse worldview. It shows that wisdom and inspiration aren't just gifts. They are commodities to be fought for, stolen, and earned through cunning. It paints a picture of Odin not just as a king, but as a relentless seeker of knowledge, willing to do anything to get it. And it gives a mythical origin to one of the most powerful forces in human culture, the power of words. The idea that a single drink could grant genius is a fascinating concept. So next time you hear a brilliant song or read a powerful poem, maybe you can think of Odin, the eagle, and the stolen drink of the gods. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more tallies from mythology. Fiala and Galar weren't finished with their mischief. One day, they invited a giant named Gilling to go fishing with them. Out on the open sea, they deliberately capsized their small boat and simply watched as the giant, unable to swim, drowned beneath the waves. When Gilling's wife heard the news and began to weep for her husband, the dwarves silenced her permanently by dropping a heavy millstone on her head. As you might imagine, Gilling's son Sutung was furious. He seized the 2 dwarves and took them to a small, rocky islet known as a scarier place that would be completely submerged at high tide. As the water rose around them, Fiala and Galar begged for their lives. They offered Suting the most precious thing they had ever created, the mead of poetry. Suting accepted their offer. He took the magical mead and hid it deep within a mountain called Hinnitbjörg, setting his own daughter Gunnald to guard it day and night. For a time, the divine power of poetry belonged to a single giant family. Everyone else, the gods, the humans, the dwarves, was left with nothing but plain, ordinary words. That is, until the Allfather himself, Odin, heard rumors of this wondrous drink. Odin is known by many names: the Allfather, the god of wisdom, the god of war, the god of kings. But if you read the Norse myths, you'll find he rarely gets what he wants by just asking nicely. He's a trickster. He cheats, he steals, and he makes great sacrifices for knowledge and power. So when he learned of the mead of poetry, his mind was made up in an instant. It would be his. He disguised himself and traveled to the farm belonging to Bogi Sutung's brother. There, he found 9 servants hard at work, cutting hay in a field. With a whispered spell, all 9 men dropped dead where they stood. Baugi was distraught. "All my workers are gone," he cried. "How will I ever harvest my fields now?" This was Odin's chance. He offered a deal. "I will do the work of all 9 men for you." Bulwark, which means evildoer. All summer long, Odin, as Bulwark, toiled for Bogi. He plowed, he reaped, he stacked the hay, working with supernatural speed and never once complaining. When the last of the harvest was in, Bogi went to his brother Sutin to ask for the promised reward. "Let my worker have 1 sip of the mead," he pleaded. He did the work of 9 men, but Sutin refused flatly. "Not 1 drop," he snarled. "The mead is mine and mine alone." So Odin suggested a more direct approach. He handed Baugi a magical auger, a drill named Rati, and told him to bore a hole straight through the side of the mountain. Nidbjörg Baugi drilled nervously. After a while, he claimed the hole was finished, but Odin was suspicious. He blew into the opening, and a shower of rock dust blew right back into his face. The tunnel wasn't clear. "Keep drilling," Odin commanded. When the hole was finally open all the way through, Odin did something extraordinary. His body twisted and his bones bent, and in a flash he transformed himself into a snake. Just as Bogi tried to stab him with a drill, Odin slithered through the tiny hole, deep into the heart of the mountain, where he found himself face to face with the guardian of the mead, the giantess Gunnald. Deep inside the mountain fortress of Hittberg, Gunnald sits alone, guarding 3 massive vessels. Suddenly, a stranger appears. It's Odin, now in the form of a handsome man, stepping out of the shadows. He charms her with sweet words, offering companionship to a woman who has known only stone walls and the heavy weight of her duty. The myths are brief, but they are clear. Odin spends 3 nights with Gunnald. In return, she grants him 3 sips of the mead of poetry, 1 from each of the 3 great vats. But Odin isn't interested in a polite taste. At the first vat, he raises the horn to his lips and drains it in a single, mighty swallow. At the second, he does the same, and then the third, again. In 3 massive gulps, he empties Ukarera, bone, and Essen. All the mead, all the Savasi's blood, all the power of poetry, knowledge, and persuasion. It's now all inside Odin, and Odin alone. He thanks Gunnald for her hospitality, and then he betrays her. In a flash, Odin rushes to the tunnel. He transforms again, this time into a great eagle, and bursts out of the mountainside. Behind him, Gunnald's father, the giant Sutun, hears the commotion. He, too, takes the form of a massive eagle and launches into the sky in furious pursuit. High above Midgard and Jotunheim, the 2 creatures race through the air, one carrying the stolen mead in his belly, the other seeking vengeance. Back in Asgard, the gods see Odin coming. They scramble to the walls of their stronghold, rolling out huge vats and barrels. Just as Suting's about to catch him, Odin dives over the wall of Asgard. He spits the precious mead out into the waiting containers, a golden river of divine inspiration. But he's not entirely neat about it. In his haste, some of the mead splashes out behind him, falling to the ground, spilling in the dirt. This, the Norse said, is where bad poetry comes from. They called it the Rimsterskär, the true mead of poetry. Odin keeps for the gods and for the rare human he deems worthy of the gift. But the dregs, those are for the fools who think they're geniuses, but really aren't. So, what is this strange and violent story really about? On the surface, it's an origin story, explaining why great poets and storytellers seem touched by something divine, something beyond the ordinary. But if you look deeper, you see something else entirely. In Norse mythology, wisdom is never free, it is never given. It is always taken, and always at a great cost. Kefazir is murdered, giants are killed, Gunnald is seduced and betrayed. Odin himself lies, labors, steals, shapeshifts, and risks his life, all for the power that knowledge brings. The mead of poetry isn't just about artistic talent, it's about control, it's propaganda. It's the power to shape memory, to decide how future generations will remember kings and battles. It's the ability to turn a brutal defeat into a glorious last stand. or a cruel, greedy ruler into a noble hero. For the Vikings, words could build a reputation that would outlive stone, steel, and even empires. No wonder they imagined that such a powerful tool had to be stolen directly from the gods. And in their version of the story, the ultimate master of spin, the original influencer, is Odin. So next time you hear a speech that moves a nation, or a story that changes history, remember the mead of poetry. According to the Norse, somewhere behind it all is a drink brewed from the blood of a murdered god, hoarded by giants, and stolen by a one-eyed trickster who sometimes calls himself evildoer. If you enjoyed this journey into the dark heart of Norse myth, you'll definitely want to see how these same gods faced the end of the world at Ragnarok. Or maybe you'd like to explore how other cultures, from Greece to Egypt, told their own epic stories of stolen wisdom. Subscribe to our channel for more legends, battles, and forgotten empires. And let me know in the comments which myth you want to explore next. Loki's monstrous children, the forging of Thor's hammer, or the tragic death of the shining god Baldur, because in the old stories, the gods are never as noble as they seem. Thanks for watching. Imagine if all human genius, every great poem, every cunning plan, came from one stolen drink. What if the source of all inspiration wasn't a muse, but a heist? Today we re-diving into one of the greatest Norse myths, how Odin stole the mead of poetry and turned wisdom itself into a weapon. This isn't just a story about a magical drink. It's about power, propaganda, and a god who would do anything to get what he wanted. In the Viking Age, words were power. A king's reputation, his legacy, even his claim to the throne, could be made or broken by a poet. These poets, called skalds, were the original PR machines. There were spin doctors, historians, and influencers all rolled into one. A good skald could get you fame, fortune, and a place in the sagas. A bad one could erase you from history. The Norse believed this incredible power didn't come from talent alone. It flowed from a single, divine source, a magical mead brewed from blood and betrayal. The story of this mead begins with the end of a war. The two tribes of gods, the Geir and the Vanir, made peace by spitting into a single vat. From this divine saliva, they created a being named Kvasir. He was the wisest being in all the 9 realms. Kvasir traveled the world, sharing his knowledge freely with anyone who asked. But not everyone appreciated his wisdom. 2 dwarves, Fjalar and Galar, grew jealous. They lured Kvasir to their underground workshop and murdered him. They let his blood drain into 3 vessels, a great cauldron named Ukria, meaning stirrer of inspiration, and 2 smaller vats, Bone and Essen, symbolizing the offering and reconciliation that poetry can bring. The dwarves then mixed Kvasir's blood with honey, and through their dark alchemy, they brewed the mead of poetry. Anyone who drank it would become a master poet and scholar. The source of all creative genius was now in the hands of 2 murderous dwarves. Their killing spree wasn't over. The dwarves later invited a giant named Gilling and his wife for a visit. They took Gilling out on a boat, deliberately capsized it, and left him to drown. When his wife wept with grief, they dropped a millstone on her head from the roof. This was a bad move. Gilling's son, the powerful giant Sutun, came looking for revenge. He seized the dwarves and was about to leave them on a rock to be drowned by the rising tide. Terrified, Fjalar and Galar offered Sutun their most prized possession in exchange for their lives, the mead of poetry. Sutun accepted the deal. He took the 3 vessels of mead and hid them deep inside a mountain called Hinnitberg. To guard this immense power, he set his own daughter Gunnhild. The message was clear. Knowledge and inspiration were no longer for everyone. They were treasures to be hoarded by the powerful, locked away from the world. News of this incredible mead eventually reached the ears of Odin in Asgard. The Allfather, ever hungry for knowledge and power, knew he had to have it. He disguised himself as a mortal farmhand, calling himself Bolverk, which means evildoer, a hint at the questionable deeds to come. He traveled to the lands of Sutung's brother, a giant named Bogi. Odin found 9 of Bogi's slaves mowing a field. He offered to sharpen their sides with his magical whetstone. The blades became so sharp that the slaves all wanted to buy the stone. Odin tossed it into the air, and in their frenzy to catch it, the slaves accidentally killed each other with their scythes. Just like that, Bogi was short 9 workers. Odin asked Bolverki offered to do the work of all 9 men for the entire summer. His price, not gold, not land, but a single sip of Sutung's mead. Bogi agreed, though he admitted he had no control over the mead. After a long summer of hard labor, Odin demanded his payment. Bogi went to his brother Suting, but the giant flatly refused to share even a single drop. Odin then revealed his true nature and forced Bogi to help him. He gave the giant a drill and told him to bore a hole into the side of the mountain where the mead was hidden. Once the hole was made, Odin transformed himself into a snake and slithered inside. Bogi, realizing he'd been tricked, tried to stab the snake, but Odin was too fast. Inside the mountain chamber, he found the giantess Gunnhild, guarding the precious mead. Odin changed back to his handsome divine form and set about seducing her. He spent 3 nights with Gunnhild, and in exchange she promised him 3 sips of the mead. On the first night, he took his first sip and drained the entire cauldron, Ukbaria. On the second, he drained the vat bone. On the third, he finished the last vat, Essen. He didn't take 3 sips, he drank it all. Odin, the great manipulator, had once again used deception and seduction to achieve his goals. With all the mead of poetry inside him, Odin transformed into a mighty eagle and burst out of the mountain, flying as fast as he could toward Asgard. When Suttung discovered the theft, he also took the form of an eagle and gave chase. The race across the sky was desperate. Back in Asgard, the other gods saw Odin approaching with Suttung hot on his tail. They quickly set out barrels and containers all along the walls of Asgard. As Odin flew over the city, he regurgitated the precious mead into the barrels, securing it for the gods. But in his haste, with Suttung nipping at his tail feathers, a few drops of the mead spilled out from his rear end. This fallen mead splattered across Midgard, the world of humans. The sagas say this is the portion for bad poets, the skaldfithel, the poetasters and hacks. So, the next time you hear a truly terrible rhyme, you can thank Odin's frantic escape. So what does this myth really tell us? It's more than just an adventure story. It's a powerful metaphor for how knowledge is controlled. Odin, the ruler of the gods, steals wisdom and then distributes it as he sees fit. The best poetry is reserved for the gods and their chosen favorites, the skilled skalds who serve kings and chieftains. Everyone else gets the leftovers, the bad mead. This perfectly mirrors how Viking society worked, where skalds were essentially state media, crafting the narratives that upheld the power of their patrons. The myth of the mead of poetry is a cynical, brilliant take on inspiration. It suggests that art, knowledge, and talent aren't just given freely from on high. In the Norse world, wisdom is not given, it's stolen, weaponized, and rationed from above. Thanks for watching. If you want to explore more of the cunning and complex world of the Norse gods, check out our videos on Tyr Odin's other quests and the real history of the Vikings. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more myths decoded. In Norse mythology, every god, every hero, every realm will one day face total annihilation. This is not a story of triumph. This is Ragnarok, the prophesied apocalypse, where even the mightiest gods fall in the most terrifying part. Odin knew it was coming all along, but couldn't stop it. Chapter 1. The Prophecy 0:45 to 4 o'clock. Our story begins with a sacrifice. Odin, the Allfather and King of Asgard, sought ultimate wisdom at Memi as well. But knowledge of the future came at an unthinkable price, his own eye. When Odin dropped his eye into the depths, the waters rippled with visions of doom. He saw a massive wolf with jaws wide enough to swallow the sky, a serpent so large it encircled the world, and a fire giant wielding a sword brighter than the sun. In that moment, Odin saw everything: the death of gods, the collapse of realms, and his own end in the crushing jaws of Fenrir. The prophecy was clear, the fate was sealed. And despite all his power, Odin could not escape destiny. The Norns had already woven the final thread. The visions spoke of events that would unfold with chilling precision. 3 endless winters with no summer. The Fimbulwinter, a world plunged into chaos as families turned against each other. The unbreakable chains holding back the greatest monsters would finally snap, and the gods would face the very enemies they had created through fear, neglect, and betrayal. The countdown to Ragnarok had already begun. Chapter 2. The monsters. To understand Ragnarok, you must know the monsters. First, Fenrir, the monstrous wolf born of Loki and the giantess Angrboda. The gods raised him in Asgard as a harmless pup, but as he grew, so did their terror. Fenrir grew larger with every passing day, towering over the gods, feared by all except Tyr, the only one brave enough to feed him. No chain could hold him, not one. So the gods turned to the dwarves, the greatest smiths in all the realms. They forged a magical ribbon called Gleipnir, crafted from 6 impossible things: the sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, and the spittle of a bird. When the gods asked Fenrir to test this delicate ribbon, he agreed on one condition: that a god place their hand in his mouth as a gesture of trust. Tyr stepped forward without hesitation, and when Fenrir realized he had been tricked, that the ribbon held firm, he closed his jaws with unstoppable force. Tyr's hand was gone. The wolf was bound, but his fury waited for Ragnarok. Next comes Jormungandr, the world serpent, another of Loki's terrible children. Odin cast the serpent into the oceans of Midgard, thinking to hide it from the world. But there, it grew and grew, until its enormous body encircled the entire planet, biting its own tail. Thor encountered the beast once during a fishing trip with the giant Hymir. The thunder god nearly dragged the serpent from the deep, their eyes meeting in a moment of pure hatred. But Hymir, terrified, cut the line, sparing the world a battle it was not yet ready to witness. Their true clash, a fight destined to kill them both, would come only at Ragnarok. And then there is Surta, the primordial fire giant, older than the gods, older than the worlds. He waited in Muspelheim with a flaming sword so bright it outshone the sun. At Ragnarok, Surtur would march with an army of fire giants across the Bifrost and burn Asgard to ashes. These are the three destroyers: Fenrir, Jormungand, Surtur, the beasts of prophecy that would bring ruin to gods and mortals alike. Chapter 3. Odin's preparation. Knowing the prophecy, Odin prepared for centuries. He built Valhalla, the hall of the slain. Here, every warrior who died bravely in battle was chosen by the Valkyries and brought to this shining fortress. They feasted each night on meat from a magical boar that regenerated endlessly, drinking oceans of mead, and every morning they fought to the death, only to rise again as if nothing had happened. But Valhalla was not a reward, it was a recruitment center. Odin was building an army, the Einherjar, an army so vast that 800 warriors could march through each of Valhalla's 540 doors at once. 432,000 soldiers, trained for the sole purpose of fighting in the final war. And still, Odin knew it would not be enough to stop the end. The Allfather used every tool at his disposal. His ravens, Hugin and Munyan thought and memory flew across the 9 realms each day, returning with knowledge no other being possessed. He held Gungnir, a spear that never missed, forged to strike with absolute certainty. He rode Sleipnir, the 8-legged horse, faster than any creature alive. Odin even mastered Cider, a powerful form of magic considered unmanly and taboo among the gods, because he understood that pride had no place in the face of destiny. He sought counsel from the Norse beings who weave fate itself. He questioned Valva prophetesses, searched for hidden knowledge, and gathered relics of unimaginable power. Every decision, every alliance, every battle Odin fought was part of a centuries-long effort to change a future he knew he could not escape. For Odin understood one thing better than anyone: all of his preparation, all of his armies, all of his wisdom were leading him toward the day he was destined to die. Chapter 4. The signs begin. The signs of Ragnarok would be unmistakable. First came the Fimbulwinter, 3 endless winters with no summer to break them. Snow fell forever. The sun dimmed, growing cold and distant. Crops withered. Entire realms starved beneath a sky that refused to warm. In Midgard, human villages descended into chaos. Hunger tore communities apart. Families fought over the last scraps of food. Brother killed brother. Fathers turned on sons. The moral order shattered, just as prophecy foretold the collapse of society before the collapse of the world. Then the earthquakes began. Deep beneath the earth, Loki, bound in torment with venom dripping onto his face, writhed in agony. Each violent thrash sent tremors across mountains and valleys. His bonds, weakened by centuries of suffering, began to fail. In the darkness, Fenrir sensed the change. The impossible ribbon Gleipnir forged from things that did not exist began to fray. And then it broke. The wolf's howl, filled with centuries of fury, echoed across all 9 realms. The unbreakable was broken. Fenrir was free. Far out at sea, the world convulsed as Jormungand released its tail. The world serpent rose from the depths, its massive coils causing tsunamis that devoured coastlines. The oceans themselves became instruments of destruction. And Loki, burned by venom, twisted by hatred, finally tore himself free from his chains. His loyal wife Sigyn could no longer shield him, but Loki did not seek mercy. He wanted vengeance against the gods who had imprisoned him and destroyed his children. He took command of Naglfar, the massive ship built entirely from the untrimmed fingernails and toenails of the dead. Crewed with Draugr, the restless dead, and with this army of the damned, Loki sailed from Helheim to wage war against the Aesir. High atop the Bifrost, Heimdall, the ever-watchful guardian, saw the doom approaching. With golden armor gleaming and Jollahorn in hand, he drew a deep breath and sounded the alarm. Splash shook the cosmos. Across every realm, gods and mortals alike heard the call. Ragnarok had begun. Chapter 5. The final battle. The armies converged on Vigrid, a plain stretching 100 leagues in every direction. From Valhalla marched Odin's 432,000 Einherjar. From Muspelheim came Surtur, leading an endless tide of fire giants. Frost giants thundered in from Jotunheim. Loki arrived from Helheim at the helm of Naglfar, bringing the dishonored dead. And rising from the ocean depths came Jormungand, its venom turning the sky black. So great was the oncoming storm that the Bifrost itself, the Rainbow Bridge, cracked, splintered, and shattered as Surtur's army crossed it. The link between realms was destroyed forever. What followed was a battle beyond imagination. Thor met Jormungand in their long-awaited final clash. Mjolnir struck with a force that shook the worlds, and the world serpent finally died. But as it fell, it released one last breath of poisonous mist. Thor staggered back 9 steps before the venom claimed him. The defender of gods and men collapsed lifeless on the field. Odin, riding Sleipnir and wielding Gungnir, charged toward the monstrous wolf Fenrir. The Allfather had foreseen this moment, yet could not avoid it. Fenrir's jaws stretched from earth to sky and closed around Odin, swallowing him whole. the king of the gods, was gone. But Odin's death did not go unavenged. Vr, the silent god, stepped forward wearing the enchanted boot made from every discarded scrap of leather ever stitched. Planting his foot on Fenrir's lower jaw, he seized the upper and tore the wolf's mouth apart. In a single act of brutal strength, he slew the beast that devoured his father. Elsewhere in the battlefield, Tyr faced Garm, the hellhound of Helheim. The one-handed god and the monstrous hound struck each other down in the same instant. Heimdall confronted his eternal foe, Loki. Their hatred burned deeper than any other rivalry among the gods. Their duel was fierce, personal, and ended with each striking a fatal blow. Watchman and trickster fell together, lifeless in each other's arms. Freyr, god of prosperity, faced Surtur without his magical sword, a weapon he had traded away for love long ago. Armed only with a stag's antler, he was no match for the fire giant's blazing blade. Freyr was cut down beneath Surtur's flames. With the gods fallen, Surtur carried out his final destiny. He lifted his flaming sword and brought it down upon Yggdrasil, the world tree that bound the 9 realms together. Fire swept across creation. Asgard burned, Midgard burned. Every realm was consumed by flame and turned to ash. And then, silence. The gods were dead. The monsters were dead. The realms were gone. This was the twilight of the gods. This was Ragnarok. Chapter 6. The rebirth. But the prophecy didn't end with destruction from the ashes. Something new would emerge. As the fires faded, the earth rose once more from the sea, green, fresh, alive. From the charred remains of Yggdrasil, tiny shoots of new life pushed upward. The world tree, though wounded, began to grow again. And from within its sacred trunk stepped a human's leaf and Lith. Their names meant life, and eager for life, they had survived the end of the world by hiding in Yggdrasil's shelter during the flames. Now, they would repopulate a renewed earth. Some gods, too, endured the apocalypse. Vidar and Vali walked the reborn land. Modi and Magni, the sons of Thor, emerged carrying Mjolnir, their father's legendary hammer. And most astonishing of all, Baldur returned from Helheim, his radiance brightening the new world. The god whose death said Ragnar Ingmoshul lived again. Even the sun was reborn. The old sun had been devoured by the wolf's skull, but her daughter rose in her place, a new light shining over a world restored. The surviving gods built a new Asgard, simpler and humbler than before. Humanity flourished without the shadows of the old conflicts. This was not a perfect world, but it was a world given a second chance, and perhaps Odin had seen this all along. In Mimir's well, he saw his own death, but also the rebirth that followed. Sometimes the old world must burn completely before something better can grow. That is the true meaning of Ragnarok, not only an ending but a beginning. The Norse believed fate was inevitable, but that didn't mean you faced it with fear. Odin knew he would fall, yet he prepared for centuries and met his fate with courage. That is the heart of Norse mythology, meeting the end with honor, knowing that destruction makes way for renewal. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Ragnarok, subscribe to Old World for more legendary tales from history's greatest civilizations, and tell me what myth or mystery should we explore next. Have you ever noticed that ancient civilizations thousands of miles apart told almost identical stories? The Greeks had a great flood, so did the Hindus, the Mesopotamians, the Norse, the Aztecs. Every culture has a trickster god who breaks the rules. Every hero follows the same journey. Every mythology predicts the world will end in fire. This isn't coincidence. Today we're uncovering the 7 universal patterns that appear in every mythology on Earth, and the historical evidence proving these ancient cultures influenced each other. By the end of this video, you'll never look at mythology the same way again. Chapter 1. The Flood Myth. Chapter 1. The Flood Myth. Let's start with the most widespread pattern, the Great Flood. In Greek mythology, Zeus floods the earth. Only Deucalion survives by building a boat. In Hindu mythology, Vishnu warns Manu about a coming flood. Manu builds a boat and survives. In Mesopotamian mythology, written 2,000 years before the Bible, Utnapishtim is warned by the gods, builds a boat, survives a flood that destroys humanity. In Norse mythology, when the giant Ymir is killed, his blood floods the world. Only Bergelmir escapes in a boat. The Aztecs believed the 4th sun was destroyed by a massive flood. Notice the pattern. Divine warning. Boat. One survivor. Total destruction. Rebirth. This story appears in 95% of world mythologies. The details are too similar to be coincidence. Some scholars believe this points to a real catastrophic flood around 10,000 BCE, passed down through oral tradition. Others argue it represents humanity's universal fear of natural disasters. Either way, the flood myth proves ancient cultures were telling the same stories. Chapter 2. The Hero's Journey. In 1949, Joseph Campbell discovered every hero's story follows the exact same pattern. He called it the Hero's Journey. Stage 1. Hero starts in ordinary world, receives call to adventure. Stage 2. Hero receives supernatural aid from mentor or magical item. Stage 3. Hero faces trials testing their worthiness. Stage 4. Hero experiences symbolic death and rebirth transforming. Stage 5. Hero returns home with gift or knowledge. Greek Perseus receives divine weapons, slays Medusa, saves Andromeda, returns a hero. Hindu Rama is exiled, receives aid from Hanuman, battles demon king Ravana, returns to claim his throne. Norse Sigurd receives magical sword, slays dragon Fafnir, wins treasure, becomes legend. Egyptian Horus avenges father Osiris, battles Set, transforms into rightful king. Japanese Momotaro is born from a peach, gathers animal companions, defeats demons, returns with treasure. Same pattern, different cultures, same story. Why? Because the hero's journey reflects universal human growth through challenge. We all face trials. We all transform. We all return changed. Chapter 3. The Trickster God. Every mythology has one god who refuses to follow the rules. Norse Loki shapeshifts, causes chaos, fathers monsters, triggers Ragnarok. Greek Hermes steals Apollo's cattle as an infant, becomes messenger between worlds. Hindu Krishna breaks social norms playfully, challenges rigid traditions. Egyptian Set murders brother Osiris, battles Horus for the throne. West African Anansi, the spider, tricks gods and humans, brings stories to the world. Native American Coyote creates and destroys with equal enthusiasm. Why does every culture need a trickster? Because tricksters represent necessary chaos. They break unjust rules. They challenge authority. They drive progress through disruption. Tricksters are how ancient cultures acknowledged chaos isn't evil, it's essential for change. Chapter 4. The dying and rising god. A god who dies and comes back to life appears in almost every ancient religion. Egyptian Osiris is murdered by Set, cut into pieces, scattered across Egypt. Wife Isis reassembles him, brings him back as god of the underworld. Greek Persephone is abducted to underworld, dies symbolically, returns each spring bringing life to earth. Norse Balder is killed by mistletoe but will return after Ragnarok to rule the new world. Hindu Shiva destroys the universe at end of each cosmic cycle, then recreates it. Mesopotamian Tammuz dies each year and is resurrected, bringing the growing season. This pattern represents the agricultural cycle. Ancient peoples watched crops die in winter, return in spring. They created gods mirroring this death and rebirth. But it also represents transformation. Death isn't the end. It's transition to something new. Chapter 5. The Cosmic Tree. Ancient cultures believed one sacred tree held the entire universe together. Norse Yggdrasil is the world tree connecting 9 realms, God, Midgard, Hell, and 6 others. Hindu Ashvatha is a sacred fig tree, the cosmic axis holding reality in place. Mayan Ceiba tree connects underworld, earth, and heavens. Egyptian Jet pillar represents Osiris's spine, cosmic stability. Mesopotamian tree of life stands in the Garden of Eden. Why trees? Our trees have roots reaching down, trunks standing firm, branches reaching up. They connect underworld, earth, and sky naturally. Ancient peoples saw trees as the perfect symbol for cosmic order. Chapter 6. The underworld journey. Heroes must visit the land of the dead. Greek Orpheus descends to rescue wife Eurydice. He's told not to look back. He looks back. He looks back, she's lost forever. Mesopotamian Inanna descends through 7 gates, stripped of power at each, hung on a hook, revived 3 days later. Hindu Savitri follows Yama, god of death, to save her husband through clever debate. Norse Amud rides to hell to retrieve Baldur, fails when one being refuses to weep. Japanese Izanagi descends to Yomi, sees his decayed wife Izanami, flees in horror. The pattern: journey to forbidden realm, stripping of power, confrontation with death, impossible test ending in tragedy or triumph. Why? Because facing death is the ultimate transformation. Heroes must confront mortality to truly understand life. Chapter 7. The Apocalypse. Ancient cultures knew the world would end in fire. Norse Ragnarok. Gods battle giants. World burns, rebirths from ashes. Hindu Kali Yuga ends when Kalki Avatar destroys evil. New cycle begins. Greek Titanomachy. Olympians overthrow titans in cosmic war. Egyptian mythology. Apophis tries to devour Ra every night in eternal battle. Zoroastrian. Final battle between Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu. Christian revelation. Armageddon. Final judgment. New heaven and earth. They all agreed. The world ends in fire. Then it begins again. This represents a cycle of destruction and creation. Empires fall. New ones rise. It's the pattern of history itself. Historical connections. These aren't just similar stories. There's historical proof cultures influenced each other. When Alexander the Great conquered Egypt in 332 BCE, Greek and Egyptian mythologies fused. They created Serapis, combining Zeus and Osiris. Hermes became Thoth. Hades became Osiris. Same gods, different names. The Indo-European language family connects Greek, Norse, Hindu, and Persian mythologies. Zeus and Hindu Dyaspita both mean skyfather. After Alexander reached India, Hercules appears in Buddhist art as Vajrapani, the protector deity. Dionysus and Shiva are the same: god ecstasy, destruction, creation, intoxication. Odin equals Zeus, Thor equals Hercules, Loki equals Prometheus. These aren't coincidences. These are trade routes, conquests, and shared ancestral roots. So why do all mythologies connect? 3 reasons. First, shared human psychology. We all face death, creation, good versus evil. We create similar stories. Second, ancient trade routes. Greek traders reached India. Romans conquered Egypt. Vikings traded with Byzantium. Stories traveled with merchants and soldiers. Third, Proto-Indo-European roots. Greek, Norse, Hindu, and Persian mythologies share a common ancestor from 4000 BCE. All mythologies are connected because all humans are connected. We face the same fears. We ask the same questions. We tell the same stories. The names change, the cultures change, but the patterns remain. If you found this fascinating, check out my video on why Medusa was actually the victim, not the monster, and subscribe for more hidden truths from ancient mythology. The past isn't as separate as you think. Imagine an entire royal army marching into the desert and never coming back. No bodies, no weapons, just silence. For over 2,000 years, historians have argued over one simple question: how do 50,000 trained Persian soldiers just vanish from the face of the earth? Today we're going deep into the heart of one of the oldest unsolved military mysteries in history, the lost army of Cambyses. This is a story that has everything: a mad king, an ancient curse, and an enemy that you can't fight with swords and spears: the desert itself. So, who was Cambyses and why did he send an army to its doom? To understand that, we have to go back to the Persian Empire at its absolute peak. Cambyses II was the son of the legendary Cyrus the Great, but where his father was known as a liberator. Cambyses had a very different reputation. Ancient writers, especially his enemies, painted him as a cruel, unstable, and impulsive tyrant. They called him the Mad King. His biggest obsession was conquering Egypt. After a brutal campaign, he captured the capital, Memphis, and humiliated the pharaoh, a man named Psamtik III. But conquering Egypt wasn't enough. Cambyses wanted to crush all resistance, real or imagined. And he heard whispers of defiance coming from a remote, sacred place deep in the western desert, the Oracle of Ammon at the Siwa Oasis. The priests there had apparently refused to recognize his authority. For a king like Cambyses, this was an insult that could not be ignored. So, he decided to make an example of them. He would send a massive force not just to conquer them, but to burn their temple to the ground. This wasn't just a military mission. It was an act of pure vengeance. And so, he gathered an army of 50,000 men and ordered them to march into the unforgiving sands of the Sahara. The Greek historian Herodotus is our main source for what happened next. He tells us that this army of 50,000 soldiers set out from the ancient city of Thebes, now Luxor. They were well supplied and pointed west, towards the Siwa Oasis. For 7 days, they marched across the sands, from one small oasis to the next. They reached what was called the Isle of the Blessed, likely the Karga Oasis, their last known stop. This was the last time any outsider ever saw them alive. From there, they pushed deeper into the open desert. Now, imagine the conditions. You're wearing wool and bronze armor under the blistering Sahara sun. Water is rationed, and your life depends entirely on your guides knowing the way to the next well. Every dune on the horizon looks exactly the same. The heat is relentless. The wind is a constant abrasive force. Herodotus says that somewhere in that vast emptiness, the army made camp. And then, a great and deadly wind rose from the south. A catastrophic sense the soldiers themselves. Bronze and iron don't just disappear. Human bones can survive for thousands of years in the dry desert climate. So where is it all? For centuries, this lack of evidence made many historians deeply skeptical. They argued that Herodotus, who was Greek and writing about a Persian enemy, probably exaggerated the story. Perhaps it was just propaganda designed to make Cambyses look like a foolish and arrogant king who was punished by the gods for his hubris. After all, what better way to slander an enemy than to say he was so incompetent he lost an entire army to a stiff breeze? For a long time, the academic consensus was that the story was mostly a myth, and no mass grave has ever been officially confirmed. The desert kept its secrets. So if the army did exist, what could have happened to it? This is where the theories get really interesting. Theory number 1 is the simplest: the catastrophic sandstorm. Herodotus' account is the classic explanation. A powerful desert storm, known as a khamsin, can appear suddenly. These storms can create walls of sand hundreds of feet high, blotting out the sun and making it impossible to breathe. It's entirely possible that a disoriented and exhausted army could be caught in one, with many suffocating or getting buried alive. But would it completely erase all evidence? That's the sticking point. You'd still expect to find something eventually. A sandstorm buries things, but the desert is always shifting. The wind that buries can also uncover. Theory number 2 is sabotage or mutiny. Think about it. The army was in hostile territory, far from home, on a mission to destroy a sacred site. Morale was likely low. What if the local guides, who were Egyptians, deliberately led them astray into a waterless region to die? Or perhaps the soldiers themselves, facing certain death from thirst, mutinied against their commanders. Maybe they turned back, only to be ambushed by Egyptian forces loyal to the deposed pharaoh. In this scenario, Cambyses' regime would have had every reason to cover up such a humiliating failure. Lost to a sandstorm sounds a lot better than my army deserted and was wiped out because of my bad planning. Then there's theory 3. It was all just a huge exaggeration. Maybe Cambyses didn't send 50,000 soldiers. Maybe he sent a much smaller force, perhaps only a few thousand. Herodotus was known for using big, round numbers for dramatic effect. A smaller unit, lost in the desert, would be much harder to find. This theory suggests the core event, a military disaster in the desert, was real, but the epic scale of it was a story created later as a moral lesson about the dangers of offending the gods and underestimating the power of nature. Of course, the idea of a lost treasure, a whole army buried under the sand, has been irresistible to explorers. For over a century, archaeologists and adventurers have scoured the western desert, hoping to be the one to solve this ancient puzzle. There have been several tantalizing claims. Back in 2009, 2 Italian archaeologists announced they'd found it. They presented evidence of human remains, bronze weapons, and arrowheads that they claimed were from Cambyses' army. It made headlines around the world. But other experts quickly disputed their findings. The location didn't quite match Herodotus' account, and the artifacts couldn't be definitively linked to that specific Persian army. The search is incredibly difficult. The search area is vast, thousands of square miles of shifting dunes. What's visible one day could be buried the next, and for centuries, anything of value that was discovered would have been taken by local tribes or looters, scattering the evidence forever. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack, but the haystack is the size of a country and it's constantly rearranging itself. So, let's clear up what most people get wrong about this story. First, despite all the exciting headlines you might see, we do not have a confirmed, universally accepted site for the lost army. The mystery is still very much unsolved. Second, the story as we know it is a complex blend of a real historical event layered with myth, enemy propaganda, and dramatic storytelling. Cambyses probably wasn't a cartoon villain, and Herodotus wasn't just a simple reporter. So what's the most likely scenario? It probably looks something like this. Cambyses did send a military force into the desert. It was almost certainly much smaller than 50,000 men. This smaller army, already weakened by bad planning, the extreme heat, and a lack of water, was then hit by a severe sandstorm. In the chaos, they were either finished off by the storm, scattered and died of thirst, or were ambushed by local Egyptian forces who used the storm as cover. The disaster was a huge embarrassment, so the official Persian story became a vague tale of the army being lost to the sand, a narrative that their enemies were more than happy to embellish into a legend of divine punishment. So, did a cursed army really vanish without a trace? Or did history just bury them under layers of lies and sand? I want to know what you think. Tell me in the comments. Which theory do you believe? Was it total annihilation by nature, a clever political cover-up, or just an ancient exaggeration? If you love dark military mysteries like this one, make sure you check out our playlist for more lost legions, cursed kings, and forgotten battles. And do you forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next story the ancient world tried to erase. Thanks for watching.
Picture this. You're a sailor in the 8th century. Your fleet surrounds the greatest prize on earth, Constantinople. Your commanders promise an easy victory, rich plunder, and divine favor. Then, the sea catches fire. Flames race across the water toward you. Buckets, sand, even prayer does nothing. Men jump overboard to escape the burning ships, only to discover the fire follows them into the waves. This isn't myth. This is the real terror of Greek fire, the Byzantine weapon that turned entire navies into floating pyres, and whose formula was protected so brutally that it died with an empire. Today, we're entering the old world to uncover how this impossible weapon was created, how it made an empire untouchable, and why the secret was guarded with blood. In 717 AD, the Byzantine Empire was collapsing. Enemies on all borders. the mighty Arab Caliphate assembled a massive invasion, perhaps 1,800 ships, to finally erase Constantinople. The defenders had one hope: a secret weapon recently developed under Emperor Constantine IV and perfected by Emperor Leo III. As the Arab fleet approached the city's sea walls, Byzantine warships emerged, fitted with strange bronze tubes. At a signal, they spat out a stream of liquid flame. Chroniclers described ships wrapped in fire, sailors melting like wax. Those who leapt into the sea found the water itself burning. The invasion was shattered, not by numbers, but by fear. So what was this nightmare fuel? We don't have the exact recipe. That's the mystery. But clues survive. Greek fire wasn't just flaming oil tossed in jars. It was pressure pumped through siphons sticking to holes, armor, and flesh. Historians think it combined petroleum or naphtha, sulfur, resin, and possibly quicklime or saltpeter. Together, this created something like ancient napalm, a sticky, self-sustaining flame. Some sources even suggest it ignited when it touched water, thanks to chemical reactions with quicklime. The key difference was control. Greek fire could be projected, not just thrown. That's what made it a true super weapon. For about 5 centuries, the Byzantine navy was feared across the Mediterranean. Arabic, Bulgar, and even later Crusader sources mention Greek fire with dread. Naval tactics changed. Instead of charging in two-board, enemies kept their distance. Some fleets refused to fight anywhere near Constantinople's waters. Chroniclers tell of entire squadrons destroyed in minutes. One Arab admiral is said to have watched helplessly as his fleet turned into, quote, a furnace upon the sea. Whether the numbers are exaggerated or not, one thing is clear: Greek fire bought Byzantium time, centuries of it. But the strangest part of this story isn't the weapon itself. It's how far the Byzantines went to keep it secret. The formula was treated like a state-held doomsday code. Only the emperor and a tiny circle of trusted technicians supposedly knew the full process. Artisans who worked on different ingredients were kept separate so no single person could reproduce it. Foreign envoys who tried to bribe their way to the recipe disappeared. Some Byzantine sources even hint that members of the imperial family risked execution if they attempted to sell the secret. Whether every story is true or not, the pattern is clear. This wasn't just a military asset. It was sacred, forbidden knowledge, and the price of betrayal was blood. So, how do you lose something this powerful? Part of the answer is time. Empires change, borders shrink, wars are lost, and the chain of knowledge breaks. But there's a more dramatic moment. 1204, the Fourth Crusade. Western Crusaders, supposed allies, storm Constantinople instead. Palaces are looted, churches burned, libraries destroyed. If the formula was kept in imperial archives, that may have been the moment it vanished forever. By the time the city fell again in 1453, Greek fire was a legend. Modern scientists have tried to recreate it. Some have produced terrifying mixtures, but nothing that matches the ancient descriptions exactly. Maybe the secret really did die with Byzantium. Or maybe, somewhere in a forgotten manuscript, the recipe still waits. If a weapon like Greek fire reappeared today, it wouldn't just change naval battles, it would rewrite entire war doctrines. Ancient history isn't just about ruins and dates. It's about dangerous knowledge, lost on purpose, or by accident. If you want more old-world secrets, from cursed emperors to forbidden weapons, hit subscribe and ring the bell. And next, watch my video on the Roman Emperor, who built such terrifying weapons that his own people tried to ban them.
For centuries, the Temple of Karnak has stood as a testament to the power of the pharaohs. Its massive columns and intricate hieroglyphs telling stories of gods and kings. But what if the greatest story was the one never told? What if, hidden deep within its sacred walls, lay a secret so profound it could shatter our understanding of the ancient world? Recently, a team of archaeologists, working in a section of the temple previously thought to be fully explored, made a discovery that has sent shockwaves through the academic community. They stumbled upon something that, according to official timelines, simply shouldn't exist. It all started with an anomalous section of a wall that didn't quite match the surrounding stonework. Driven by curiosity, the team used ground-penetrating radar, and what they saw on their screens was impossible. A void, a hidden chamber sealed for millennia. The air was thick with anticipation as they carefully dismantled the stones, revealing a passage that hadn't seen the light of day since the time of Ramesses II. The entrance was small, almost insignificant, as if deliberately designed to be overlooked. What lay beyond was a space untouched by time, a time capsule from a forgotten era. Inside the chamber, the air was still and heavy with the scent of ancient dust. But it wasn't the sarcophagi or the golden treasures they expected. Instead, the room was filled with objects that defy explanation. Strange crystalline devices hummed with a low, almost imperceptible energy. Intricate metal spheres, covered in geometric patterns unlike any known hieroglyphs, were arranged in a perfect circle. And in the center of the room, a large, obsidian-like table was etched with what looked like a star map, but a map of a star system that is not our own. These artifacts were unlike anything ever found in Egypt, or anywhere else for that matter. These finds challenge everything we know about the technological capabilities of ancient civilizations. One of the most perplexing items is a series of interconnected golden rods, which when analyzed, showed signs of conducting immense energy. Some independent researchers have suggested they might be components of an ancient power source, a form of technology far beyond simple mechanics or fire. Could the ancient Egyptians have harnessed a form of energy we are only now beginning to understand? The precision engineering of these objects rivals modern manufacturing. With cuts and joints so fine they are seamless to the naked eye, this level of craftsmanship, on materials so difficult to work with, suggests a mastery of tools and techniques that history books tell us were invented thousands of years later. So, why isn't this front-page news? When we reached out to several mainstream Egyptologists for comment, the response was a wall of silence. Official statements are vague, referring to the find as ceremonial items of indeterminate origin. But sources within the archaeological team, speaking on the condition of anonymity, tell a different story. They speak of pressure from higher authorities to downplay the significance of the discovery, to classify the artifacts as mere ritual objects, and to seal the chamber off for further study, a study that might never be made public. Why would they want to hide something of this magnitude? This leads us to the heart of the matter, the potential for a cover-up. Could it be that this discovery is so revolutionary, so paradigm-shifting that it threatens the very foundations of our established historical narrative? If the ancient Egyptians possessed advanced technology, where did they get it? Was it developed independently, or was it a gift from a more advanced, perhaps even non-human, source? These are uncomfortable questions, and perhaps questions that certain institutions would rather we not ask. The narrative of a slow, linear progression of human civilization is a simple one, but discoveries like this suggest history might be far more complex and mysterious than we've been led to believe. The implications of this find are staggering. If ancient civilizations possess technology we can barely comprehend, it rewrites not just a chapter of history but the entire book. It forces us to reconsider the myths and legends of gods who came from the stars, not as fantasy, but as potential historical accounts. It suggests that humanity may have reached great technological peaks in the distant past, only to lose that knowledge through some forgotten cataclysm. The secrets hidden within the Temple of Karnak aren't just about the past, they're about our future and our true potential as a species. The evidence is there, but will we be allowed to see it? What do you think? Is history about to be rewritten, or is this the greatest cover-up of all time? Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into the unknown. If you want to keep exploring the mysteries of our ancient past, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new discovery. See you next time. 4,000 years ago, one man stood at the bedside of the most powerful people on Earth, with a bronze knife in one hand and a spellbook in the other. In 2025, archaeologists finally found his tomb. What they discovered inside will change how you see ancient medicine forever. This is the story of the Pharaoh's doctor, and the terrifying mix of science and sorcery he used to keep gods on Earth alive. In late 20, team working at Saqqara, the vast necropolis of ancient Memphis, were clearing what they thought was just another minor shaft tomb. Behind a narrow plastered wall they hit something unexpected, a hidden chamber cut deep into the bedrock. Inside were finely carved reliefs, storage niches, and a stone sarcophagus. The walls didn't show battle scenes, or hunting, or banquets. They showed patience, bent backs, injured limbs, eyes being prodded with long, thin tools. The partially damaged inscription gives us only fragments of his name, but one word is clear: S.O.N. physician. Whoever this man was, he wasn't a village healer. The richness of the chamber, the imported oils, the specialized bronze instruments buried beside him, Everything screams elite. This was a man trusted with the bodies of the powerful, maybe even the pharaoh himself. But if you could step into his clinic, it would look nothing like a modern hospital. In ancient Egypt, sickness was rarely just physical. A fever might mean the anger of a god. A cough could be a hostile spirit lodged in the chest. So our Saqqara doctor worked in 3 worlds at once: the body, bones, blood, wounds. The divine gods like Sekhmet, goddess of plague and healing, and the invisible demons, curses, restless dead. A typical prescription might sound like this: you shall boil willow bark in water to cool the heat in the blood, while reciting 7 times, "May Ra's burning eye depart from this servant." The willow bark contains salicin, a chemical cousin of aspirin. That part actually works, but for him, the chant was just as important as the herb. A treatment wasn't complete until both the body and the unseen forces were addressed. Buried beside the doctor were dozens of tools. Some are instantly recognizable: thin bronze scalpels with sharpened edges, hooks and probes, bone needles for stitching flesh, forceps designed to grip, something that texts from other medical papyri help us decode what he did with them. For cataract, the clouding of the eye, an Egyptian surgeon could insert a needle at the edge of the eye and push the cloudy lens down and out of the pupil. Crude, dangerous, but sometimes it restored vision. For crushing head injuries, he might drill or scrape a hole into the skull, a procedure we call trepanation to let out the bad wind or relieve pressure. Archaeologists have found Egyptian skulls with clean trepanation holes and new bone grown around the edges, proof the patient lived for months or years afterward. This wasn't random butchery. It was a rough, painful, but surprisingly effective understanding of anatomy learned the hard way on living bodies. Of course, not everything in this toolkit would pass a modern ethics review. Take a look at the ingredients lists preserved in Egyptian medical texts. Ground mummy, yes. Actual powdered human remains. Dried crocodile dung. Blood from specific animals, sometimes described as pure. Strange mixtures of beer, honey, fat, and moldy bread. The logic can sound bizarre, but it wasn't random. Crocodile dung is dry and absorbent in their minds, a substance that drinks blood and closes wounds. Eyesight problem. Then use the eyes of a fish, dry them, grind them, and blow the powder under the eyelid. Honey, on the other hand, accidentally worked. It's naturally antibacterial. Some of their wound dressings, combining honey and bandages, may have genuinely prevented infection. But the most unsettling hints are in rituals that speak of blood from the innocent or the unblemished. Was human blood ever part of royal healing ceremonies? The texts don't openly admit it, but the language is ominous. When the life of a living god, the pharaoh, was at stake, the price of a cure could be terrifying. Medicine in the Old Kingdom was brutally unequal. At the very top were men like our Saqqara physician, literate, trained, attached to the court. Beneath them, other SSMW-treated soldiers, officials, and wealthy households. For everyone else, sickness meant a visit to a temple, begging a priest to drive out a demon, or relying on family remedies passed down by word of mouth. The doctor we're following was different. His tomb includes imported unguents, expensive stone vessels, and carefully wrapped instruments, some capped with gold. He wasn't just paid in grain and thanks. He was rewarded like a high official. He didn't just treat bodies. He protected the image of the gods on earth. If a pharaoh limped, went blind, or died too soon, that was a cosmic problem, not just a medical one. So what did the world keep from men like this, and what did we throw away? Greek travelers like Herodotus wrote that Egyptian doctors were the best in the world, each specializing in one part of the body. Greek physicians studied Egyptian techniques, especially in anatomy and wound care. The Romans copied many of these practices. Some surgical tools from Roman forts look almost identical to those in Egyptian tombs. Even today, surgeons still drill into skulls to relieve pressure. We still use plant-based painkillers. We still swear oaths about how we treat patients, oaths that may trace distant roots back to temple medicine along the Nile. What vanished were the spells, the gods, the demons. Modern medicine tries to separate the physical from the spiritual completely. But standing in that Saqqara tomb, surrounded by scalpels and spells, you're forced to ask, for his patients, did the magic actually help? Did belief itself, the certainty that the pharaoh's doctor, backed by the gods, was treating you, ever tip the balance between life and death? We can analyze his tools. We can translate his papyri, but we'll never fully step inside the mind of the man who used both a knife and a prayer to save a king. If you want to see just how far ancient medicine could really go, stick around. I've got a story about brain surgery in the Stone Age that will make this look almost kind. This is Old World. Subscribe for more forgotten doctors, cursed cures, and the dark side of ancient empires. Imagine you're a Roman soldier at the foot of a Greek city wall. The ground is shaken, men are shouting, shields are locked in front of you. Then you hear it, a snap like thunder. Somewhere above the walls you look up and it's already too late. A 6-foot iron bolt is flying toward you faster than you can raise your shield. It doesn't just pierce one man, it rips through 3. This is the Greek belief. The ancient war machine that changed the face of warfare and turned stone walls from protection into a death trap. To understand this weapon, we have to go back not to the battlefield but to the workshop. In the 3rd century BC, Greek cities were locked in a constant arms race. Every new wall, every new fortress, demanded a new way to break it. And in this race, Greek engineers were the secret weapon. These weren't brute force blacksmiths hammering metal in the dark. They were mathematicians, geometers, men who calculated angles and tension long before anyone had a word for ballistics. They knew something crucial. If you could store energy in twisted rope and then release it all at once, you could turn a block of wood and iron into a precision killing machine. Imagine taking thick ropes made of animal sinew, twisting them so tight they creak, then jamming heavy wooden arms into them like a bow drawn permanently to full tension. Now attach a sliding bed for a bolt, add a winch and a trigger, and you don't just have a catapult. You have a weapon that can throw a spear farther than most men could even see clearly. Greek manuals from engineers like Philo of Byzantium describe these machines in almost obsessive detail. The measurements, ratios, the exact diameter of the springs. This wasn't guesswork, it was science. So what did this monster actually do? Picture a giant crossbow, turned up to 11. 2 thick arms were locked into those twisted rope bundles. Between them ran a wooden rail to better the machine wear a bolt as long as a man was laid. A crew of soldiers would crank a winch, dragging the bowstring back, inch by inch. With every click of the ratchet, the twisted ropes screamed with more stored energy. When the commander gave the order, one man pulled a simple trigger pin. All that energy, stored in rope and wood, unleashed in a fraction of a second. The result? A bolt that could fly over 400 yards. Ancient writers describe these projectiles punching through shields, armor, even thick wooden gates. Tests with modern reconstructions suggest a ballista could drive a bolt through about 6 inches of solid oak at close range. Stand in front of that and it doesn't matter how brave you are, you're not walking away. Even more terrifying, this wasn't random bombardment. Unlike many older catapults, the ballista could be aimed with disturbing precision. Hit a man on the battlements. Possible. Pick off the officer giving orders. Also possible. For the first time in history, commanders on the wall could be targeted from hundreds of meters away. The Romans met the true potential of these weapons at one city, Syracuse. In 212 BC, Rome laid siege to this powerful Greek city in Sicily. They brought everything: siege towers, battering rams, thousands of men. What they didn't expect was Archimedes. Yes, that Archimedes. Not just a mathematician yelling Eureka in a bathtub, but a military engineer designing devices to keep his city alive. Ancient sources claim that Syracuse's walls bristled with ballistas of many sizes, from huge engines that hurled massive stones, to smaller sniper versions picking off individual soldiers. Roman siege towers that in other wars would have rumbled safely to the walls now became perfect targets. A carefully aimed barrage of bolts and stones tore them apart before they could even get close. Imagine looking up at a 40-foot wooden tower, proud symbol of Roman engineering, and watching it collapse in splinters under invisible fire from the walls. Some accounts say that Roman soldiers became so terrified of approaching the fortifications that they refused to advance within range. Whether every detail is true or not, one thing is clear: Rome won that war, but they learned a painful lesson. Ignore Greek engineering, and your legions die. The Romans were very good at one thing in particular: stealing good ideas and making them better. After fighting Greek cities and Macedonian kings, they began capturing ballistas, studying them, and building their own. They shrank the design, they mounted them on carts, they turned a static siege engine into mobile artillery. Roman versions like the Scorpio and the Caraballista could sometimes be operated by just 1 or 2 men. Picture a line of legionaries advancing under a hail of bolts and behind them compact machines methodically picking off enemy officers on the walls. By the 1st century AD, ballistas weren't just rare superweapons, they were standard equipment of a professional army. The Greeks had invented a terrifying machine for defending and attacking cities. The Romans turned that idea into doctrine. So did the ballista just vanish when gunpowder arrived? Not exactly. The core idea of the ballista is simple: store energy, release it in a controlled direction, use math to predict where the projectile will land. That logic is the foundation of every piece of artillery that followed, from medieval counterweight trebuchets to early cannons to modern howitzers and missile systems. Medieval engineers studied ancient texts to rebuild and adapt these machines. Renaissance artists and thinkers, including Leonardo da Vinci, sketched their own improv versions. Today, we don't twist rope or pull wooden arms. We ignite explosives and burn fuel, but the calculations angled tension. Trajectory would look surprisingly familiar to a Greek engineer from 2,200 years ago. In a way, the ballista wasn't just a weapon. It was the moment when war stopped being only about bravery and muscle, and became a science. On an ancient wall, somewhere in Greece or Sicily, a crew of men once stood around a machine of wood, iron, and twisted rope. To them, it was the cutting edge of destruction, a device that could decide the fate of cities, kingdoms, and empires. And in a sense, we're still living with the consequences of that invention today. If you want to see how other ancient weapons terrified entire armies and how they shaped the rise and fall of Rome, Egypt, and more, check out the video right here on screen. And if you enjoy diving into the lost technology and brutal realities of ancient warfare, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next forgotten war machine. Because in history, the most important weapon is often the one nobody saw coming. Have you ever felt like a piece of the puzzle is missing from our history books? What if I told you that the greatest civilization in human history wasn't in Egypt or Mesopotamia, but right here in the Americas? And what if I told you that its existence has been deliberately scrubbed from the record? For centuries, we've been taught a specific version of history, a linear progression from primitive hunter-gatherers to the grand empires of the Old World. But what if that's not the whole story? Recent archaeological discoveries, some hidden in plain sight, are shattering this old narrative. We're talking about structures that predate the Egyptian pyramids by thousands of years, stonework so precise that even our most advanced modern technology can't replicate it. Imagine a civilization with astronomical knowledge so profound it could rival NASA, mapping celestial events with staggering accuracy. Think about technology that simply shouldn't exist in the ancient world, artifacts that defy our understanding of the past. These aren't just fringe theories. This is evidence being unearthed from remote jungles and windswept plains across the Americas. So why haven't you heard about this? Why are these discoveries relegated to the footnotes of history, if they're mentioned at all? We're about to journey into one of the biggest cover-ups in academic history. We'll examine the artifacts that have been systematically removed from museums, the peer-reviewed papers that have been buried, and the brave archaeologists who risked their careers to bring this truth to light. This isn't just about ancient stones and forgotten kings. This is about our own origins. We've found shocking DNA evidence that proves transoceanic contact happened millennia before Columbus ever set sail. This evidence connects the ancient Americas to Egypt, Mesopotamia, and other cradles of civilization in ways that mainstream history refuses to accept. It suggests a global, interconnected ancient world far more advanced than we've ever been led to believe. Get ready to question everything. In this deep dive investigation, we will lay out the forbidden evidence piece by piece. We'll explore the impossible engineering that built these lost cities, decode the ancient astronomical secrets they held, and follow the genetic trail that rewrites the story of human migration. We'll look at why this powerful civilization was erased. Who benefits from keeping this knowledge hidden? Is it a simple case of academic dogma, a refusal to admit they were wrong? Or is it something deeper, a conspiracy to control the narrative